Hello everyone, welcome back from ReactCon, Henderson, Nevada. I'm here with the speaker from Meta React team, Nicolas, or as you may know him from repositories, Nicolas. Hey, how are you?
Hey, good, thanks for having me.
So I really enjoyed your talk and I'm really excited to be speaking with you because I first got familiar with your name and avatar using React Native Web, of course. I don't know, probably 7 years ago or something. Yeah. And you mentioned on the stage that this project is almost as old as React Native itself. So let's start there. Sure. Maybe what pushed you to starting that project and how come you started React Native Web and what was the initial use case and reaction?
Well, it was just around the time that we'd started rebuilding the Twitter website. And one of the challenges that we'd had with Twitter in the past was similar to what lots of other teams have had, which is that styling components became very unpredictable. As they'd move around somewhere else in the app, they might look different because some container was inadvertently modifying the appearance of the elements within a component. And so we weren't really able to build components in the way that you might think of them now. Mm-hmm. Instead, it was more like little chunks of HTML, and you didn't really have tight control over what that HTML would look like. And so when React Native came out and Christopher Shadow had been talking about CSS and JS, I saw immediately that API would be a way to help constrain how you could style things. And so I wanted it on the web, basically.
Okay.
And so because we were looking for a better styling solution and high level abstractions. And at the time, React Native with on layout, on views, for example, felt very powerful. It was something that I, experimented with building. And after, a kind of initial prototype, it just kept going. And then we ended up using something like that at Twitter.
So are you saying that at the beginning, it wasn't a way of rendering React Native on the web, rather using React Native styling and composition to better design and develop for web?
Exactly, yeah, because we wanted that kind of composition and that feeling of proper encapsulation that, later on web components would try to replicate as well. And so that's exactly what it was. And we did have some prototypes early on where we did the opposite of what most people do now, where we brought parts of our web app to native using React Native, because React Native for web was a superset of React Native. So that direction is less lossy than coming from native to web.
Yeah.
But Twitter never pursued the direction of using React Native itself.
Many products that I know that I worked on, they use React Native for web. So thank you for that work. And now let's switch to React Strict DOM, which is, I guess, a successor, but not coming from native to web, but coming from web standards to native. This project is not new. We've been talking about it 1.5 years on this conference as well. What happened between 1.5 years and now in React Strict DOM?
I think there's a couple of things that happen. One is it's continued to be used at Meta and adopted, and we've added more and more features. So it's feeling more stable, something, not necessarily stable, but something that's we feel more confident has value. And the other is that the investments that the React Native team have made in React Native mean that the details of how it will really function, especially going forward, are now possible. So the rollout of the new architecture, the ability to have synchronous APIs, all the work that Ruben talked about of so many DOM APIs that have been added, top level web APIs like Intersection Observer, new CSS capabilities that people like Nick and Joe on the React Native team have added. All of this is making React Native be able to reproduce web experiences more and more accurately. And that is just getting more value out of this approach, basically.
So I also noted from your talk that Meta is heavily invested in rewriting some of the solutions to React Strict DOM, React Strict DOM. And then which parts of your broader product ecosystem are using this technology, and how far along are you in sharing and using that in those products?
I can't talk about things that we haven't talked about publicly. I'd say it's still in the early phase of using web code to build native apps. But the key benefit of this approach is that if we migrate web code onto this API, for Meta at least, there's almost no downside, because it's essentially what we already do, just like a new syntax and slightly stricter version of how we already write code on the web. So the more of like the design system components that we build this way, or that we migrate over with automated tooling, the more those we have like that as an option available for future native products.
Oh, okay. I get it now. So if you start using the new syntax for web projects, there is no downside, because like it's basically just like an abstraction layer that like pipes into just regular HTML APIs.
Exactly.
And then that code base can now possibly be run on native devices with some minimal changes when you end up deciding that you want to do that.
Yeah. I mean, not even minimal changes. It just does run. Because like essentially, I mean, so we have this syntax for React Strict DOM, the kind of like HTML.div.
Yeah.
And we have a Babel plugin that just flattens that away, and we just go straight back to div.
Oh, yeah.
So there's like no overhead on that front.
So it's not even an abstraction. It's just like a syntax that gets translated through Babel.
But yeah. And there's a couple of details, like, the HTML4 prop becomes 4 or the other way around, so it's really small things.
Okay.
And then for the styling level layer, we already have a version of styling on the web that's very similar to React Native style sheet. And so we just combine the two behind another abstraction. And again, all of that is processed by a compiler and gets turned into static CSS. So on the web, it's, there's kind of like no downside really, other than having to opt into some slightly stricter guarantees, which we'd already been trying to do on the web anyway, because it allows us to have like a lot of the benefits that people have enjoyed on React Native, like better encapsulation, portability of components. A component that was written for a design system for Facebook can be used in Instagram or vice versa because of the interop that this approach to styling has. So, my vision of it would be that in the future, it would be developers would choose to use the syntax instead of React DOM and like a styling library, and that it just provides the option value of running on native. Yeah. And so people who are building component libraries could do the same. The vast majority of their component library could be written once with this shared like abstraction layer and run natively on React Native and on the web. And then any kind of custom components would use the React Native forking mechanism to build like custom implementations. So rather than that being like 90% of the work at the moment, people want to build like a component library for both platforms. They have to build it once in React DOM and once in React Native.
Yeah.
Instead, it would be the majority would just be web APIs. And then when you want to fork for specific reasons, like maybe virtualized lists or something, you can choose to do that explicitly. And your users would still have the same API, but you can control the implementation.
That's so cool. Last question. We talked a little about meta products. What about just like products in broader perspective, like from other companies? We saw, I think, Zalando on the stage being an example of early adopters of it. Do you know any other products or companies that are experimenting with it and like using it in either POC phases or production?
No, I don't. I mean, it's good because I don't want to hear that anything's wrong with it, So if I don't hear from people, I guess it's
that's
all right.
probably a joke. That's probably a joke.
But yeah, I mean, I hope that people try it out. And, I think there's a lot of momentum in the React Native ecosystem to move towards this alignment with the web, not just within Meta, companies like Expo and CallStack. There's a lot of benefit for you to be able to pull in people who are very familiar with existing web APIs and kind of show them that they can use that knowledge to build high quality native apps. And so even if it's not to like one app that runs across all platforms, I think even if someone just wants to build like an iOS app, even having them be able to come into your world and use APIs and abstractions that they're familiar with, and then your tool chain, your SDK or whatever it is, just takes care of all the other complexity of how to actually like build and deploy and publish that app. I think this is really good for React and is really good for web developers who want to expand the options that their skill set gives them.
Yeah. I'm really excited about that. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
talking with me, and see you around.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.